And so he comes in as completely unprepared, with a completely unrealistic set of expectations as the number 2 pick in the draft. That's not easy.
Shawn Paul Bradley, born March 22nd, 1972. Today's feature was known for being one of the tallest players in NBA history at 7'6". He's also known for players marking the date and taking pride in playing against and possibly dunking on him as evidence they could climb the highest mountain. You see 7-footers play basketball, and most of them look as if one false move could end it all because of the unnatural body makeup, balance at that size, or weight on their bones and joints at that size. They labor up the floor, have bad hands and feel for the game, possibly slow, and are specifically used as shot blockers or rebounders for obvious reasons, but not Shawn Bradley. For his height, the first thing you notice watching a young Shawn Bradley was that he was very spry and athletic for his size. Not an oversized, unnatural, maybe of disorder kind of makeup, but a natural, fluid running and jumping motion that is still maybe the only player of that size I can remember with those capabilities. With that said, Bradley dominated as an amateur in the sport, and by his senior year in high school was a McDonald's All-American and won the game's MVP before heading to BYU for 1 year, averaging 5 blocks a game and becoming the team's leading scorer and rebounder. More than that, like mentioned, he showed no signs of being feeble at that size, or that with some added pounds he couldn't dominate the 90s at the center position, which is why when he entered the NBA draft, no one at the time thought Penny Hardaway, Jamal Mashburn, or Vin Baker would have better careers than Bradley. Certainly not Nick Van Exel, Allen Houston, or Sam Cassell. But they did. All selected to at least one All-Star team over their careers to Shawn Bradley's 0. The disappointment came early for Bradley as the 7'6" center drafted by the 76ers and wore number 76 was expected to come in and be the NBA's new interesting and dominating attraction. Instead, he struggled athletically and physically and couldn't consistently show that at his height, he could become a centerpiece for a franchise or even compete with the best of the best at that time at his position. And oh, was he targeted. Dunking on Shawn Bradley was climbing Everest and not dying in an avalanche in the 90s and early 2000s. Then what happened? The Stunted Growth story of why the Stormin' Mormon Shawn Bradley didn't meet expectations. Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Shawn Bradley was a 7'6" center born in West Germany while his father served in the U.S. military, but raised in Castledale, Utah. He and his siblings were taught and raised as Mormons, also known as Latter-day Saints. By 13 years old, Shawn was already 6'8", and by 16, he was 7'5". Later, a DNA evaluation revealed Bradley's growth wasn't because of a disorder like many his size are, but of natural growth lottery inherited from his parents. His dad was 6'8" and his mother 6 foot. By the end of his senior year at Emory High School, Bradley was already a local star with stories and news reports done on him regularly. He became Mr. Basketball for the state of Utah after averaging 25 points, 17 rebounds, and 9 blocks. He once had 18 blocks in a game, to which he still holds a Utah state record. He was selected and scored 12 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 blocks in the McDonald's All-American game and won the West MVP. Stunt number 1, on a mission.
He was, 19 years old or 20 years old when he got into the league, signs his big contract. Everybody has these expectations, and he just got back on a mission. He had no idea.
After a stellar high school career, to say the least, Shawn Bradley chose BYU over every top school in the country because it was close to home, but most importantly, understood his beliefs as a Mormon and the sacrifices you have to make as part of that religion. For Latter-day Saints, it is encouraged but not required to travel far from your home on a mission, they call it, to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ to as many as you can. Missionaries can spend up to 2 years where they're assigned and all need to finance the mission themselves. So, after entering BYU and immediately becoming the star of the program what would look to be the next 4 years, Bradley decided to take off on his religious mission in Australia for 2 years before entering the draft. He averaged 14.8 points a game, 7.7 rebounds, and 5.2 blocks in just 28 minutes as a freshman. 2 years is a lot of time away. During this mission, Bradley focused intently, just as he did with basketball, and made his mission his main priority. Along with being too focused to take a break and work on his game, it also wasn't a time where everyone had a trainer, making sure you develop correctly, sometimes even off the court, monitoring your eating, rest, and recovery. When he went away, he went away. Losing those years of developing his body for the physical play, especially on a pale white guy with a basic haircut waving Bible verses, was a huge loss for Bradley, who from day one in the NBA realized that height can only take you to the promised land. Whether you eat or starve there is up to the development you've gotten along the way. Lack of development, plus being taken so high and expected to be the savior of a bottom-feeding Sixers team that had just missed the last 2 playoffs and on a crash course to missing 7 straight, distracted Bradley's growth. His days as a Mormon were long and tedious. There was no time for basketball, much less the opportunity to get better to ensure he comes in and has success early before being labeled a bust or a mistake or even losing confidence. He averaged 10 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 blocks as a rookie, earning second team All-Rookie. He was traded after just 2.5 years to the New Jersey Nets for Derek Coleman. He wouldn't last long there either, as New Jersey then traded him to Dallas during the 96-97 season. He had a slow start to his career, and in my opinion, him taking that mission at such an important development time is what hurt him. Stunt number 2, lack of specific skill. I think another problem with Shawn Bradley pertaining to why he didn't meet expectations was because he didn't have a specific skill or value outside he was tall and could block shots and rebound. Offensively, Bradley was very limited on what he had to offer a team. His post play wasn't sound because he never really had to use it until he got to the NBA and every coach tried to post him up, ignoring the fact he hadn't developed that as yet. His Mormon mission could be to blame. With another year in college, defenses would have began game planning for Bradley more attentively, forcing him to have to expand his game. Without back-to-the-basket game, at a time back-to-the-basket post-to-perimeter play was the default offense, Bradley found himself just out there at times and couldn't adjust. He didn't shoot deep threes or fadeaways or mid-range jumpers. He was strictly a streaking center with good open court play and post moves that needed time to be effective. He played most his career in Dallas, where he had a career year in 96-97 in 33 games. In his first full season in Dallas, he averaged 11 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 blocks. His play would decline drastically from then on, starting at just 26 years old. Injuries are normal in the case of an overwhelming 7-footer, but not in this case. Yes, he dealt with nagging injuries like every player does, but Bradley regularly played 60 games for the Mavericks, and it didn't end in a championship. Stunt number 3, light in the buns. A term an old coach of mine used to use to explain a player that was of great size to the eye like a 7-foot Shawn Bradley, but for some reason his strength didn't quite match. He'd always be moved out of position and even bullied out of his spot. With his calm Christian demeanor, he rarely showed he would fight back in enough situations for his peers not to try him physically. The opposite of what you hear about somewhat slight-framed Steph Curry, who isn't bullied on the floor even at his size. Shawn needed a competitive example. Only thing, he never had those experiences to know how to consistently bring the energy needed to handle those in a favorable manner to him. So, centers bullied him, power forwards, small forwards, shooting guards, even point guards, and every time seemed to take the fight from Bradley as he coasted to retirement after 14 underwhelming seasons in the NBA for a 7'6" center. All in all, Shawn Bradley had some solid years in the league, like the 96-97 season where he led in blocks per game, or the year following where he averaged a career-high 4 a game. Sadly, in January of 2021, he was struck by a motorist as they both attempted to avoid a parked vehicle at the same time. He suffered a spinal cord injury in his neck area and was paralyzed. A talented but more gifted player who had what it took to get to the NBA level. But for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth, and I'm out.